Hello and welcome. What I would like to do here for the next few minutes is take a look at some of the basic operations, configurations, looking at the routers. We're not going to do a whole lot of configuration in this router, just mostly look at some of the Cisco basics that we can use in these things. I'm in Packet Tracer and I have two routers on the screen here, a 2620 and a 2811. The 2811 is an ISR, an integrated services router, which allows us to have more functionality in a single router. Instead of having to have multiple routers for multiple functions, I can use this one for a number of different things. For instance, you could get a wireless module for it. So if I start it up, what I want to do, let me drag it in here. What I want to do is look at some of the things that you'll see when the router starts up. I'm going to turn it off, turn it back on, and jump over here to the command line. And the first thing that I see is it says self-decompressing the image, the pound signs. The pound signs are the symbols that we get as the system does decompress the image. I have a couple of things that are up here and a number of other things. Comply with U.S. and local laws, or all of the yes, I agree to comply with all of the Cisco requirements of this thing. So the image is decompressed. One of the first things that I'm going to see is the amount of memory that's available. We've got memory /k bytes of memory, and this is written in K. This is the first part is how much memory is available. The second part is how much memory is free. Well, if we move on down here, it tells us the processor type, the part number, mask, those sorts of things. Also, how many interfaces that we have. This one has 2 fast Ethernet interfaces that comes with it. The non-volatile configuration memory, NVRAM is what we'll call it. Non-volatile RAM is the place that we're going to store the configurations that we do to the router. We'll have to save them in order for them to be available later, which is what we would like to do, because it would be very inconvenient if we had to type in everything every time we started the router. So we have NVRAM, or the ability to store the configurations that we do. We have compact flash, and the iOS is stored in the flash memory. Coming on down here, Cisco iOS software 2800, and then the name of the iOS that's been loaded. This one is the Advanced Services version 12.4. When we go on down here, I talked a little bit, mentioned up here anyway, we have compact flash or configuration memory. If there are no configurations, and this is the first time that this router's been started, then when it loads and doesn't find a configuration file, it's going to come down into what's called setup mode. Configure with the configuration dialog. We can say yes or no. I'm not going to go through that here. You probably want to do that one time so that you know what's in it. But almost every case you're going to just say no and go configure your router, because by the time we get through doing the course and the configurations, you should be able to do that. So I'm going to say no here, and it says press return to get started. It says router, and I have a greater than sign. What we have is, in this thing, we have a number of modes that are available in Cisco. The user exec mode, limited basic, privilege mode, access to all the other router commands, including the configuration mode, the global configuration mode, configurations that affect the entire router, specific configuration modes, those that affect portions of the router, an interface, for instance, and then we have setup mode. You can get to setup mode anytime that you want if you need to do that from the privilege exec mode. The user exec doesn't really give us a whole lot of options. While we're here at the user mode, let's go back to this and look at this 2620 briefly here. And we'll do the same thing. I'll go in here and turn it off and turn it back on. Command line interface. And as we're decompressing, it says that we're at 2600. Revision, how much memory we have, how much free memory that we have as we load this thing up. And we come down, we don't have any configuration. We're going to come back to our dialog, our setup mode. So not as much functionality in this one. If you need to find out about your router, and one of the things that this one didn't show me when it started up is the name of the iOS that I just loaded. So we should be able to use the show command. Shows us particular information about what goes on with the router. Cisco has an excellent help feature, and when you take the CCNA, that excellent help feature is available to you. You can use the question mark, which shows me everything that's available after the show command. And mostly what I can do in this version, in this mode, is show. If I just use the question mark after it, it tells me the commands that are available to me. What I want to do here is show. I know, type VER and hit the tab key, and it'll finish the command for me. If I have a unique character string, it does command completion, which should help you out, at least helps me out with it in the typo area. So in the show version, when I go back to it says that the system image file flash : this says that it's stored in flash, and it's a C2600 I-MZ-122-28-bin. You'd have to go to Cisco and find out what is available there. And you notice in this one, in the version, we have one fast Ethernet port, 32K bytes of non-volatile NVRAM, and then we have a 64 meg of compact flash, read-write compact flash. We have a configuration register here. This is going to become significant later on when we have to reset the password. Somebody changes it, or we forgot it, or however we forgot the password. The configuration register, in this case the 2102, is an entry point. Tells it where to go to look for the configuration file that we didn't have. That's why we had the setup mode for each of these things. So we have the again, the question mark here will tell me all the commands that are available. So one of the commands that is available is the enable mode, EN tab enable mode, which is going to get me into privilege mode, sometimes called enable mode, and you can tell I'm there by the #. If I use the question mark here, I get a whole different set of commands that are available. This one is the point that we get that we can actually start doing things to the router, including saving the configuration. I haven't done anything yet. Let's do a couple of things. Let's try changing the name. Oh, you can't do that there because we have to be in the configuration mode when we change any of that stuff. If I make a mistake, which I did here, Cisco points out where my error is with the caret key, and it tells me I have an invalid input. I'm trying to change the name at the privilege mode. I need to be in configuration mode to actually change these things. So I can go in here and type config and tab and subs configure TE. Terminal is what we're going to use here because I'm on the terminal of these things. Configure terminal, and now host name, my router, and I've changed the name. What I would need to do, and to do that I need to go back one level, is save these configurations. We have two major configurations, or two configurations that we use. One is the running config, which is what is loaded in RAM, and the other is the startup configuration, the one that it looks for when it starts up the system. But I can't get there from here at this level. We can see that the command is copy, and I want to copy the running configuration to the startup configuration. And I can do copy or RU, doesn't work. To go up one level, I can use the exit command, and it says that it's configured from the console, and I'm back to the pound. I'm at the privilege exec mode. So I can copy running config using the tab to the startup config. Do I want to do that? Destination is where it's going to be, and yes, I do. I can show the running and the startup configurations from each of these things. The other thing that we're going to have, we had config T, and then we have a number of different lines that we can connect to this thing with. The VTY line question mark console and VTY, again, these are what are actually programmed into Packet Tracer. The VTY is the VTY line is the virtual terminal. That's what's going to allow us to do telnet as well as secure shell. So let's look at those just real quickly. VTY question mark, and this one's 0 to 15. Each one of them is going to have a different number one. Generally what we're using is 0, 4, which gives us the 5 lines. Remember that we have the 0 counts as something. In order to do this, the commands that we have here and the line, config line VTY04, we can do a banner which tells people that yes, we if you connect here, if you're not authorized, go away, because we can go back and look at logs for these things. We have banner here and login. That's generally what we're going to do. Login, enable password checking. What login does is allows us to telnet to that resource from another resource. So if I go down here and type login, which says that I want to allow people to log in, it says login is disabled until on line 67 until a password is set. So what I have to do to enable login is set a password. If we go back up here, the command to set the password is password. So password, and I'll use the really popular password, and it takes that. Now I can get all the way back to the privilege exec mode by using the exit command. If I use N, I'll go up one level to the config and then N again. Excuse me. Use the end command to get back up in there, or you can use Control Z. So if I type the show run command, which is going to show me my running configuration host name, my router, and if I keep going and keep going on down, I have the interface here. We have no configurations on it. Line VTY04 and a password of password with this. What I've done is to configure this router connected to this computer to see if we can actually telnet to it, because we set up the telnet, the VTY line, in order to do that. So I'll go my PC0, and I've made the addresses 192.168.1.1 on the router and 1.2 on this guy. Ping, let's see if there's 192.168.1.1. So I've got the ping to work here. So telnet to 192.168.1.1, and it asks me for the password, and the password that we used was password. You notice that it doesn't give you any characters. It's reading it. I'm now on my router, and we configured that. If we try to go into enable mode, it's going to tell us that no password is set on it. Through the beauty of Packet Tracer, we can now go back to this thing, and we will, let me move this over here to spell it right. See, that's where the tab comes in, and exit, go up one at a time. I'm now there, but config T We've just enabled what's called the secret password, which is the encrypted password to get into enable mode. You're not allowed to have a telnet session until you do that. So now let's try enable mode, and it just asks me for the password, and if you type it right, it works just fine. To get out of here, we simply log out, if I can spell it right, and we're back to our PC. I think I'm going to stop here for this session. But what we've looked at is the router startup, the things that you would expect to see at router startup. Very basic overview of the difference between an ISR router and a non-ISR router. We looked at the different modes briefly, how the help screen in Cisco works, how the completion command with the tab key in Cisco works, how to configure the virtual terminal for telnet, the VTY lines, how to set the password for the router for the privilege exec mode or enable mode, how to set the password and configure login for telnet. I'm going to stop here again. Thank you for watching, and I hope this has been useful.